Hey guys, Dantix here, back with another Wonderlands video. We're seeing average online plays drop off faster than Elon's haters from Twitter, and I wanted to jump on and chat about why exactly that is, and how the game has failed to capture the greater audience. For PvE games, Gearbox titles are typically quite good with player retention, Borderlands 2 still having a strong community to this day, even though it was released 10 years ago. So what about Tiny Tina's Wonderlands has people logging out only a few weeks after release? Is it simply the change of landscape? Here are the interesting reasons why I think Wonderlands has lost players and why I have taken a break from playing. Let's see if you can guess all the reasons. I'd love to hear your feedback below. First and foremost, let me address the most current problem. Reddit is absolutely blowing up in regards to the latest DLC. Coiled Captors was released not long ago, and a lot of players didn't even realize it had. Ironic for a DLC about Naga Sirens, the audience really wasn't captivated by beautiful music, more on this later. If I wasn't sent the trailer and the media pack early, I wouldn't have known it had released, and I have the Chaotic Great Edition, which has the DLC pass included. There was no prompt suggesting I had new DLC in game, nor was there a way to find out where it was located. I actually had to Google where to start it. It was near the beginning area in the overworld map, a place I would have zero reason to go to with 5 maxed out level 40 characters. Already, that seems a bit lazy. If the players tested this, they would have caught it, and it would have at least been on the bounty board. Then you jump into the DLC, it opens up with some promise, I'll give them that. A new area, a new theme. Damn, are we getting some kind of spooky carnival-like levels? No, you're meeting some boring lady and her dead hub world. Much like a social media influencer, to access the actual content, you have to peer through her mirror. This mirror will pop you into 5 or so battle arenas with a boss fight at the end. The battle arena, the enemies, and even the boss are reused content. My level 40 Chaos 20 character blew through it in under 10 minutes. Closer to the 6-minute mark when I looked at the footage, only brought up because I stopped to look at the legendary that dropped and I had to wait for rising water in one of the arenas. Then I got to spin the Wheel of Fate with the new currency I acquired. I received 3 blue items. It was kind of like being kicked in the balls after having to watch Amber Heard taking a dump in my bed. I ran this mirror a few more times and I haven't touched it since. It would be generous to say I got 30 minutes out of it, and I'm a content creator. I want to get as much footage as I can and squeeze all the secrets out of it, so naturally I see why some people who paid $10 for this are upset. It really isn't acceptable. It seems as though this hub world will be a staging area for other mirrors with more battle arenas coming in the form of other DLC. If this is the case, this is a very ballsy move by Gearbox, as the 4 DLC should really be one complete DLC, or each drop should have been free. 2K has given a lot more in the past for free, let alone paid. It does feel like 2K knows this title has a shorter lifespan, so they're powering these DLC and patches out. Which brings me to my next point, the Band-Aid patches and the increased chaos levels. I recently read an article on Forbes by Paul Tassi on his experiences in Wonderlands. He says, "I think my main problem here is twofold. First, expectations for DLC set by past Borderlands games, and second, the timing of this recent chaos cap rise. My main issue is that it took me about a month to finally get one of my classes up to begin to farm Chaos 20 comfortably, and then it immediately shoots up to 35. So I have to do the same process I just did for 15 more levels and replace all my gear with now more quickly dropping volatile variants as I march towards primordial gear at Chaos 35. Borderlands has always had a problem with DLCs that raise level caps and gear caps, negating all of your past gear, but to do so after a month feels too extreme for me, hence the pushback." So for context, Gearbox has also released a patch alongside the DLC that brought a number of positive fixes. It also brought some nerfs that a lot of people hated and some buffs that didn't really help. Most importantly, it introduced more chaos levels and a new rank of loot. Normally this would be a good thing, and let me stress that the developers caring enough to try to fix their game should be commended. But the timing of this seems a bit rushed. People have only just gotten to the higher chaos ranks, and for people like Paul, they feel the rug's been pulled from under them. I personally like more progression than items, and I'll talk specifically about items soon, but this patch gives me the impression it's released to mitigate player drop-off more than to improve the game. Someone at the top saw the fall, and as a quick fix, upped the level instead of adding actual content. The recent nerf to the overpowered weapon liquid cooling saw a lot of people leave, even though I felt the gun needed it, and now the moving of the goalpost has left people without so much time on their hands feeling like the grind isn't worth it. Both things feeling like quick fixes instead of actually addressing the root of the problem. Ideally, you want to bring other items up to the same power level so more of them are viable. Normally, I'd say it's difficult to balance a game like this, but it's a PvE game and the actual loot amount is something to be desired, which brings me to my next point and probably the biggest one for me. The sheer number of legendary items is far too low. The Borderlands series has long been known for having tons of loot. Even the Borderlands 3 major marketing point was it had millions of weapons. Within a single playthrough of Wonderlands though, I'd seen almost all the legendary items the game has to offer. Let me spell it out for you. As of this recording, there are only 8 legendary SMGs, 5 legendary assault rifles, 11 legendary pistols, 7 legendary snipers and shotguns, 3 legendary rocket launchers, and so on. There are usually less than double digits of legendaries for each category. For a game about customization, grinding to get gear, and hearing that ding when a legendary drops, I found myself bored as hell with the items in Tiny Tina's Wonderlands. It's in the title, Wonderlands. You should be left in wonder of the crazy, wacky, and interesting weapons you should be getting. It's a fantasy setting, but most of the items seem quite tame. With such a low amount of actual weapons and gear, you'd think that each one would have their uses or let you craft a character build around them. Sadly, no. There are clear better items and most legendaries simply never get used because they can't be, as they can't be competitive in those higher chaos ranks. This results in most builds, regardless of your primary and secondary class combinations, using the same handful of weapons with different rolled stats. Before it was liquid cooling, and now it seems to be gluttony. Which brings me to builds and balance. I was enjoying making build videos, but now every time I try, I have to ask myself, is this fun? Will it run the max chaos level? And is it different enough? Every single time the answer is no to at least one of those. The class system is great, the diversity in combinations was, on paper, quite exciting, but with the low amount of variety in items, it really only leaves a few things viable endgame, and that's quite sad to me, especially since power doesn't primarily come from your actual attributes and your skills, but mostly from the enchant multipliers on your items. The balance is off. There is no real diversity in loot and in character builds. I never use some class abilities endgame, and that really shouldn't be the case considering there's only 2 per class. It should be balanced better. Even now, I've tried multiple times to make the Clawbringer viable. I had just finished making a video on a Chaos Rank 20 viable Clawbringer that doesn't take 10 minutes to finish each boss. However, now with the increase, it simply can't keep up with the new maximum, and I've opted to trash the video. Clawbringers are still the worst class in the game, even with the removal of the cooldown of their capstone. In games, there will always be a better and worse class, but in a PvE game, all the classes should be viable to take on the end game. You should be able to pick a build and make it viable. This is not the case. If you want proof of this, go check out some other Wonderlands YouTubers or streamers and see what they use. I guarantee you they'll use a spell shot with some ice spikes or some form of spore warden. I say that as no doubt the footage on screen is now showing the same, but it was my first build. We try to make others work as well, but it takes very specific drops in a fairy tale situation. This all combines with the lack of items, builds, content, and now difficulty rise to make it feel like a very claustrophobic game. Which leads me to music and UI. While playing through the Wonderlands before release, I was happy with what I had. It was fun and interesting, and I really do think the Borderlands formula lends well to a fantasy setting. Besides the over-the-top signaling in the writing, it was an enjoyable experience. I did have gripes with a few things though, namely the terrible UI and the terrible music score or lack thereof. Starting with the UI, I feel as though the grind for loot is hampered by this more than it should be, and more than is immediately obvious until you really analyze it. It's exceedingly hard to compare items at a glance, and when so many drop, players find themselves ignoring most of them. The recent change to cosmetic drops made it so we weren't picking up even more junk, but a looter shooter needs to be seamless when it comes to loot management. I find myself having to stop having fun to inventory manage more often than I would stop to stare off into the empty void of existence, and they're both about the same amount of entertainment. I'm not sure how people have been making UI mods for decades and developers still aren't taking notice. I understand the need to gate inventory and bank size, but this is a 2022 AAA title, not a mobile game. I shouldn't need to pay with time and energy to increase my inventory size to appropriate levels. Realistically, we should be allowed to pick up everything and take a look after the action is over, where it may force you to sell down to a particular amount. There has to be a better way to display stats as well. At a glance, you don't really see enough of what's important. In 2022, the guns still don't show DPS, rather they show damage amounts. We need to see what their DPS is based off fire rate, reload time and damage. We need to see how much our stats change. Not just a number like a 20% increase fire damage, which is not actually a 20% increase, but a 20% of your current amount, which we can't see. So yeah, you get my point. They really need to take a page out of the many years of Diablo optimizations, because this currently feels like a Diablo 1 level of looting. Without realizing it, Gearbox has made what should be fun a chore, and alongside the other problems, it's scaring people away. Then comes the music. This is more of a personal gripe, but where is the music? I thought at least a DLC about sirens would change it up. I urge you to go and fight the final boss, then after I want you to hum the music that played.
Rise and destroy this hero!
You can't. Not just because you have no talent, but because there's no real music track. This should be an epic moment. My favorite levels in the game is a Jack and the Beanstalk inspired area, and if you sit and listen to the music, it's like someone is occasionally strangling a bird and then silence. That's it. Where's the creativity? What happened, Gearbox? I don't want to be a dick, but I feel I need to be here. You need some tough love. Whoever was responsible for the music dropped the ball and really needs to assess how they compose moving forward. This might not be a case of talent, but a case of trying new things and learning from the industry. You have incredibly talented sound designers at Gearbox, making some truly ASMR-worthy sounds. I would be surprised if the composer even talked to these veterans. Maybe this working from home situation really cost them some crucial, critical internal feedback, and I really don't blame them. I just expect better from their future titles. For the first time in decades, I found myself having to put music on as I grind the game. I never felt compelled to do this before. Right now, there really isn't a lot of competition. We are between major game releases and a post-holiday dry spell. Wonderlands has, on paper, the right stuff to keep people engaged for months. Sadly, the factors mentioned are making people leave. The DLC didn't bring people back and enforced a lot to uninstall. I've reached a point where I'm honestly quite bored of the game, and I'm hoping something changes to fix that because I really want to enjoy it. I think the DLC are locked in and any significant changes might be too little too late. All this critical feedback comes from a place of love. I hope that Gearbox takes what they've learned here and applies it to their next IP. I wish them nothing but success because I truly love them, but this needs to be a firm kick in the bum. So what do you think? Are you still enjoying Wonderlands? Let me know below. Just because others aren't enjoying it doesn't mean you can't. Tell me what you love. I'd love to hear some positivity as well. Thanks for watching, and for everything RPG, you're in the right place. Ciao, friends.